Hello, everyone, and welcome to the September 15th Tucker Mayoral Forum. I'm your host, editor, and publisher, Dan Wisenhunt. Our candidates today are Tucker Mayor Frank Almond. Mayor Almond, how are you, sir?
Very well, thanks. Thanks for getting us together.
Thank you for joining us. And his challenger, Robin Biro. Robin, how are you today, sir?
Fantastic. It's good to be with you. Thank you, buddy.
Thank you. The election is November 2nd, and early voting is going to start on October 12th. All of our coverage of the Tucker races is going to be found at tuckerobservervotes.com. That is tuckerobservervotes.com. And if you like what you're doing with if you like what we are doing with these forums, please visit supportmylocalnews.com and consider becoming a financial supporter. You can support us for as little as $3 a month, and it's what allows us to provide you with opportunities like this to see and hear from the people running for your local office. Each candidate is going to have 3 minutes to make an opening statement, and they're going to have 3 minutes to answer each question, and we'll allocate some minutes for response if we need to. Mayor Almond, since you are the incumbent, we're going to let you start with your opening statement. You will have 3 minutes, sir.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. And again, thanks, Dan, for getting us together. We appreciate you putting on this first opportunity for us to be together and talk about what we think is most important to Tucker. So I'm running for re-election because I love Tucker. I started a job. I want to finish the job. A lot of us have been dedicating our time and effort to ensure we remain together as a community and that we set up a government on a solid foundation that's going to last well beyond my time as mayor and most of our times on this planet. Cities live a long time. So I want to serve the people of Tucker for 4 more years to make sure we keep our momentum and fulfill the promises that we made during the cityhood effort. I summarize the three most important reasons for my reelection as people, plans, and projects. So people refers to the fact that we have 6 city council members plus the mayor, and I hope we get to talk about it some because I'm actually a voting member of the city council all the time. But 4 of those 6 seats are open. So we will have 4 new council members come January. In fact, of 13 people running in the 5 races, I'm the only incumbent. And so one of the real keys to our continued success is solid, committed, well-versed, well-experienced leadership. We built a great team out of 7 diverse people when we started, and we're going to be pretty close to doing that again with this new group coming in. Plans refers to the fact that we have a lot of plans that we did as a city and we did as a public body. We began with a comprehensive plan, which every city is required to have, and it talks about land use, but also the bigger vision for the city, what kind of city we want to be, what sort of priorities we have before us. So we did that plan, and then we did a bunch of sub-plans, if you will, on specific areas like transportation, parks, and trails, and downtown. Those were all chaired by steering committees appointed by me and the council from among the public. And then they held big public meetings so that everybody had a chance to talk about what was most important to them in those individual areas and in the bigger area as we went along. All those plans are going to be up for renewal or at least an update during the next 4 years. And it's critical that we get those right because we live by those. We establish our priorities, we establish our budget. The people's plans and priorities are our plans and priorities, and it'll be important to get those done well. And finally, projects refers to, we've done a ton of projects in these first 5.5 years. We've got a bunch that are in process or on the close horizon, a couple of big redevelopments at parks. North Lake Mall is being redeveloped. There's a development at Hugh Howell and Mountain Industrial Road. And so I want to see those through to the vision that we started with to completion.
Thank you, Mayor Almond. Mr. Biro, opening statement. 3 minutes, sir.
Dan, first I want to thank Decaturish for hosting this and you for moderating. Mr. Mayor, thank you for participating. But most of all, thank you to the voters for paying attention because it's important. It's an educated electorate is very important. This is a vital election. We typically see very low turnout for non-election year elections. So I'm just glad that you guys are here. There's so many already in the room right now. I want to tell you a little bit about myself first. I was I came from Columbia, South Carolina. That's where I grew up. At the age of 33, I got this wild hair to enlist in the United States Army after being staff on the Obama campaign. I went to South Carolina, North Carolina, and Georgia on that campaign. And the only thing that could match the adrenaline of that campaign, I thought, was jumping out of airplanes, perfectly good airplanes in the US Army. So I did that, and I was an Army Ranger for 10 years. And I did deploy to Afghanistan and saw the world. And I got stationed in Georgia in 2010, and I've been here ever since. I decided to make Georgia my home. I got priced out of Midtown, which is where I used to live, because the taxes were so high. One year they doubled. The very next year they doubled again. It was insane. My tax bill was higher than my mortgage statement. So I began looking right then for a more comfortable place to live. And I found Smoke Rise and Tucker because of the beautiful trees, the rolling topography. That's what brought me here. Not long after that, my father passed away, and I inherited, for lack of a better term, my two siblings, who were at the time 7 years old and 11 years old. They live with me now. I've got one at Smoke Rise Elementary and one at Tucker Middle School. They're great kids. They're absolutely thriving. The community has coalesced and wrapped their arms around us and been so fantastic and amazing. Look, my statement is this: I have served honorably. I've served the country. I'm all about public service. I am offering myself up as a public servant to continue that life of service as a public servant. And I want to talk about sort of my platform, if you will. It's pretty simple. I want to take the things that have worked for Tucker and improve upon the things that need to be improved upon. I told Mr. Mayor Almond to himself to his face that I think he's done a really good job, as have the other members of City Council, standing up the new city, all of the challenges that they had to face. He served 2 terms honorably. I'm looking to bring a new perspective and close the loop on some things. We have some significant infrastructure problems that I'll talk about later on in this discussion, but it's infrastructure. There are some issues with crime that's coming across US 78 right now that we're trying to deal with. And I want to make sure that everybody who comes to do business within the city of Tucker or lives here feels welcomed, feels appreciated, and is in no way, shape, or form discriminated against. With that, I'm offering myself up. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Biro. Okay, so I want to start this forum with probably the most contentious question. When I put this out on Facebook, I said, "What questions do you want to ask?" When I read your Q&As, I detected a theme, so I want to just dispense with this right now. Tucker's elections are nonpartisan. We all agree with that. That's the law. But both of you have known partisan affiliations. Robin Biro, as you just said, you're a Democrat, and Mayor Almond is a Republican. It's come up during this campaign, but does party affiliation really matter in this race? And how will your party affiliation influence how you govern if you are elected? And we're going to start with Robin Biro. 3 minutes, sir.
Yes, I have been accused of making this partisan. I want to say that I looked up the city charter. It's right here. I got a copy right from the City of Tucker's website. Section 2.04 says this about nonpartisan elections: political parties shall not conduct primaries for city offices. All names of candidates for city offices shall be listed without party designation. That is exactly how this will be. When you go to vote, there will be no party designation by our names. There was no primary. That in turn saves the city money. So we are following the letter of the law here. I had a legal review done on this. I even reviewed the Georgia Constitution. The text of that is right here. It pretty much says the same thing. So look, I'm running a campaign of transparency. I am being transparent with the voters that yes, I have worked for democratic and progressive causes. I'm not ashamed to be a Democrat. I, in fact, go on conservative media for the most part, giving the Democratic counterpoint almost daily, every day but Sunday. And I try to represent a common sense perspective. That's what I want to bring to this, to City Council as your mayor. I really don't like the partisan divide. I even host a podcast called American Discourse, which seeks to bring people across the political spectrum together to see where we can find commonality. That's what I can do. I did it in the military for 10 years when I served side by side with people from radically different political ideologies. We worked together to get the mission done. That's what I can bring to City Council as your mayor. I'm just being transparent about my background.
Thank you, Mr. Biro. Mayor Almond, same question to you. Does party affiliation really matter in this race? And will your party affiliation how you govern if you are elected? 3 minutes, sir.
Yeah, it matters a lot. It's right. All the cities in Georgia, there could be an exception somewhere, but all 530 or so cities, elections are nonpartisan, and they're also held in the off year, in odd numbered years like this one, when all the presidential and congressional and other races are not going on. And that's for a reason, because local races, local elections can be hard on a community in the best case. You know, you have neighbors running against neighbors, and you have legitimate disputes and differences over whatever, taxation or development, lack of development, whatever it might be. And it's hard. And I think that's part of the reason for the design that way. Um, I ran as a Republican. The only other time I ever ran for office was back in 2006. I ran for state senate against Steve Henson, who's now my neighbor and friend. We go to dinner together, and he was actually very helpful in the cityhood effort, nonpartisan. The difference here, and what I think is damaging about running as a Democrat, there's several things. One is, in the end, the winning partisan candidate is beholden to the party that got him there. He's also beholden to the other candidates running on that same forum, that same platform. So whatever my opponent is in favor of, he's got to own what his colleagues, his co-travelers are for. I have never been recruited in any of the mayoral activities by any party. I haven't been funded by them. And as a matter of fact, during the advocacy for cityhood, it was the Republicans who were our staunchest opponents. They favored the other city that we had to contend with to form the city of Tucker. And some of them lost their offices over it. You look around, you see that they're no longer in office. So it matters. And let me say it further, even within parties, the Democrats are not satisfied that there are Democrats. You look at Virginia Reese, who is a lifelong Democrat and has supported Democrats all over this county for years and years and years. They've abandoned her because she's not the right kind of Democrat. And so there's a lot of sort of linkage between them and dispute among them that's just not necessary in the things we do as a city.
Thank you, Mayor. The next question is going to go to you, Mayor Almond, first. This election has brought out many different candidates with a diverse range of perspectives. There are people of color running this year, there are members of the LGBTQ community running this year, and there are single parents running this year. What does that say to you about the future of Tucker, Mayor Almond? 3 minutes.
Well, I guess I would say that all those various personal characteristics give them a different perspective. And it's good, it's healthy for our community to have a lot of different kinds of people, different from different walks of life, offering themselves as candidates. But the important thing is competence, understanding, dedication to the job. There's a lot more that goes into serving on the city council or as mayor than what you're defined by in your personal characteristics. And so one of your questions on our 20 questions from Dan, I call it, that you asked us to fill out a while back, what had to do with, you know, what do you think about your current city council and who will you be voting for? I'm voting for competence. I'm voting for people who have bothered to dig in and understand how things work, the complexity of the decisions we make, the full impact of the decisions we make on a 20 square mile city. There are geographic areas that are very different from other geographic areas. They have different kinds of populations, different kinds of needs, different things happening across the border from them. And so it's good to have that diversity, but diversity on its own is not the answer. We can use the diversity of views, but we need competency across the board.
Thank you, Mayor Almond. Robin Biro, same question for you. There are a lot of different candidates running this year, a lot of diverse perspectives. What does that say to you about the future of Tucker? 3 minutes, sir.
I'm very excited about the candidates that we have this year. I've reached out to every single one of them and have offered to attend events with them. I offered to attend events with Virginia Reese. In fact, Mr. Mayor, I'm just not getting a response from some of the candidates. But I love that it's diverse. We have scientists running. We have someone who's got their master's in urban planning and design. I think that is Alexis Weaver. I think she would be a phenomenal asset to the city of Tucker. And I'm not supporting them just because they're Democrats. I'm supporting them because of their background, their education, what they can bring to the table. I said in my 20 questions that that I support diversifying the city council because I can look and see that it is very much non-representative of Tucker as a whole. I think that government functions best when it represents the people in all of the terms and ways that it should, and it just doesn't. To the personal attack that was just launched at me a moment ago, I have received $0 from the Democratic Party. I have received $0 from any PACs. I'm not getting any help from the Democratic Party. I am not beholden to any party. These are my ideas alone. I have researched them extensively. So, I can appreciate the political smear, but it is a smear.
Well, it's not a personal attack. And I'm looking forward to talking about issues because I think it's important to demonstrate some understanding of the issues, not only what they are, but how they get solved. So.
And this is why I wanted to get the most contentious questions out of the way first, because there are a lot of issues.
It's not an attack to say somebody who says he's a Democrat is a Democrat. That's just.
Yes, but I'm not beholden to the party. That I resent. I'm no more beholden to the Democratic Party, sir, than you are to the Republican
Gentlemen,
Party.
I appreciate your passionate views on this topic. We actually do have a list of questions that are about the city of Tucker, and I want to get to those. So, if you'll permit me, Mayor Almond, we started with you the last question, so we're going to start with Robin Biro this time. Robin Biro, in 3 minutes, can you tell it? And this is a question from a reader. Can you tell us what are your goals in the next 4 years for 3 city services: zoning, code, and parks? 3 minutes, sir.
Zoning, code, and parks. Zoning is an interesting one because we're looking to combat blight. I've been at the city meetings, and a lot of the issue that we're dealing with are grandfathered uses. So we have to wait until those uses are either no longer in business or something happens and they're discontinued uses, I believe for 90 days. So, we're on that. The city actually is doing a really good job right now on working toward that, but it's got to be continued. And when we notice that a use has been discontinued, we need to stay on top of that so that it is no longer a permitted use. There's no reason that we need to have 32 used tire shops on Lawrenceville Highway. So look, I have spent 20 years in commercial real estate. I know zoning in and out. I have worked with municipalities all over the Southeast. I know zoning codes. And we do have some room to rewrite some of these and get some of the eyesores out. There's also some of the other problems that plague the city with infrastructure. And one of those is that some of the industrial and manufacturing properties can't tie into the existing infrastructure. They can't tie into the sewer lines because they're already at capacity. So it's creating a problem where we're having stigmatized and blighted properties that can't actually pay into the tax base the way that they should if they were fully functioning. So that's something that we've got to look at. Can you tell me the other one other than zoning?
Zoning, code, and parks, sir.
Okay.
Zoning,
parks.
code, and parks.
Yeah. Parks is, the city took over parks in 2018. They've actually done a really good job. I told Mayor Almond this when I met with him, that I really appreciate the connectivity. I appreciate that the parks all have ADA compliance now. We just need to do a better job of making sure that we have funding for them beyond 2026 when the SPLOST funds are set to expire. Like I said, we're doing a great job with the money that we have now allocated, but there's no budget beyond 2026. I know this because I met with 5 of the 6 members of City Council, and they confirmed that for me.
Thank you, Mr. Biro. Mayor Almond, same question to you. What are your goals in the next 4 years for 3 city services: zoning, code, and parks? 3 minutes, sir.
Well, I assume you mean code enforcement.
Yes,
so
I believe that was the intent of the person who asked the question.
Yeah. So code enforcement it talks about enforcing the code that we have on the books, and we have several qualified, legally installed, sworn officers to enforce our code. We've also established a city court that deals with those issues. And so our philosophy is we want to be educational about that. We want to help people come into compliance, help them know what it means to come into compliance. And bringing them to court with a citation is kind of a last resort. We've done a great job of that. And I think our citizens, I've been told many times, when you come into or leave the city of Tucker, you can see a difference in signage on phone poles and signs in the right of way and mowed grass and all the upkeep that makes a city pleasing aesthetically, but it's also a public safety and health issue. So our code enforcement's been doing a great job. In regard to parks, man, we have spent effort and money and all kinds of things on improving our parks. The first thing we did when we took them over was replace every fence in every park that was bent up and broken down. We replaced every piece of play equipment in every park to make it ADA compliant, but safe and useful and attractive as well. We've added 30, in addition to all the parkland that we acquired as becoming a city, we added 34 acres of new land at Fitzgerald Field, at what's now called Bill Rosenfeld Park, others around small pocket parks around town. So we're proud of the work that we've done in parks, and it's a big part of making a quality of life and a livable city that people are attracted to. Some of our candidates have been in town just less than 3 or 4 years. Presumably they came because those kinds of things were attractive. The third, land use, was that the other?
It was zoning code and parks. So zoning code enforcement and parks.
Well, let me say something about parks. First of all, only 15% of the SPLOST money is spent on parks, and that 15% only on capital improvements in parks. It's not allowed to be spent for operations, and we handle that very carefully. We passed all of our audits, and that continues on. The SPLOST is a great funding mechanism. And the thing I can tell you about that is that when we entered into it, we, the city of Tucker, as well as the other cities around the county and the county itself, said, listen, we have got to behave ourselves. We have got to spend this money properly. We've got to make it effective. We've got to pass all the audits so that we want to be able to renew this thing. My opponent has said he's opposed to renewing SPLOST, so he's got to have another funding plan. If somehow SPLOST failed in the next referendum, there would have to be another funding mechanism. Yes, citizens are paying taxes to fund their parks right now. If it's not going to be through SPLOST, we'll have to come up with some other tax, either locally or combined around the county, to fund that. But we're not teetering on the edge somehow without a plan to be able to fund our parks.
I want to do a quick 1 minute each on that.
Yeah,
Rob and
thanks.
Biro, if you would like to respond in 1 minute to the comment about SPLOST, and then I'll give the mayor 1 minute to respond to your response. 1 minute, sir.
I actually will use my 1 minute to talk about code because I wasn't very clear that it was code enforcement. I want to say that I was at a meeting this morning for environmental code enforcement. One thing that I propose that we do, I just want to make sure that this is enforced equitably. I could look around the room and see that it looked to me very clearly that minority communities were being targeted. I haven't seen code enforcement out and smoke rise ever. So I just want to make sure that this is being targeted fairly and equitably, because I mean, there were 30 people in that room today, and 28 of them were all of one race. That is not okay to me. So equitable. SPLOST funds, yes. I just told Pat Soltis Saturday that I'm not necessarily opposed to SPLOST. If there's any way that I can stop the residents from having to do another special option local sales tax, and maybe pass that on to developers by way of developer paid impact fees, that is what I would be more inclined to do.
Mayor Almond, 1 minute from you, sir.
Well, let me say, first of all, as a city government, we don't make decisions and evaluations based on looking around a room and guessing at why it looks this way or that. That is silly. These are professional law enforcement officers sworn to duty. They themselves are of minorities. And one day in one courtroom, based on who showed up that day or who happened to be cited that day, is no way to judge a community. And it's harmful. It's hurtful to look at people and judge them by their color and make decisions as if you're going to make city policy based on that kind of a thing. We know where the citations are issued, who ends up in court, who complies, all those things. That's not a mystery.
Mayor Almond, that's actually a great segue into my next question. A non-discrimination ordinance has been talked about in Tucker quite a bit. Can you tell us what is your position on implementing a non-discrimination ordinance in the city of Tucker? 3 minutes, sir.
Yeah, we've done a ton of talking about this. So let me begin by saying to the people who are watching or listening now or on the recordings, don't confuse the fact that I have concerns about implementing a law like this on this subject with the fact that I'm empathetic to people who face illegal forms of discrimination, who are put upon by, frankly, some knuckleheads around. I read about it all over the country. There's bound to be some of that happen in Tucker. So it's not a matter of how I feel about it. When you're in the government and you're making laws that have the police power that can result in someone's arrest or taking their money or property, you have to set your feelings aside. And my duty as mayor is to make sure that we consider carefully and pass carefully any law that we pass, whether it's on this subject or any other. So in this case, there's a whole range of problems with it that we could talk about. But the first problem, and the first set of problems that we have to get over before we can even talk about the particulars of the law, are that it's out of our purview, meaning it's not something that the city is authorized or expected to involve itself in. It serves to divide us as opposed to unifying us. And I know my opponent will disagree with that, but it also will lead to a lot of potentially severe unintended consequences, like unnecessary and expensive litigation by and among our citizens. So let me just talk about the purview, because we have to get over a lot of hurdles before a law makes sense. The first one in this case is whether it's even something that is proper for the city to take up. We have a charter. It's equivalent to the US Constitution or the state Constitution of Georgia. It tells us what our authorities are. It tells us what we can and can't do, ways we have to do things if we do them, and so forth. There's nothing in our charter that talks about us getting involved in employment disputes. The only way to get through our charter to take up a law like this is to use some kind of general welfare clause. There are these lists of things that we can and should do, and often at the end, in several different places, there's a kind of a throwaway sentence that says something like, and anything else necessary to, assure the general welfare and health of the community, in the context of that list that it just finished. So the first problem is, if we attempt to go outside of it and use that kind of a clause, we're going to be talking all kinds of Washington-style talking head politics that divide and that we can't do anything about as a city. So one thing I've been offering since the beginning, and by the way, I've had conversations with every person who's involved in writing that ordinance. I've had conversations with one of my opponent's chief spokespeople and the chairman of the Tucker Democratic Party, one-on-one, in groups, loud voices, quiet voices. There's been a lot of talk about this. I see you raising your finger.
Thank you. Yeah, you're at 304, but I expect we might have a response or two back and forth about this. Robin Biro, 3 minutes, sir. What is your position on implementing a non-discrimination ordinance in the city of Tucker?
I have a copy of the ordinance right here. I've read it front to back. I've had a legal opinion done on it. I think that this is something that should have been acted on quite a while ago. This was brought before City Council back in 2019. It is my understanding that it never was read for consideration. I've inquired as to why it has been kicked back. I've been told a litany of excuses, to include the fact that they wanted the drafters to rewrite it. That is the job of City Council and the city attorney. They can look at this, modify what they don't like in here, and change it. In fact, I just met with one of the people who drafted it, George Wellborn. They fully expected this to be modified by City Council. The ordinance, as written right now in its draft form, this is just a draft, does protect against familial status, gender identity, national origin, religion, sexual orientation, veteran status. That's important to me as a veteran. And I just want to say that as a veteran, the only time I've ever been denied service was while on active duty while wearing the uniform. I was actually told that I was no better than welfare recipients. So I'm glad that it protects veterans. I think that we have a responsibility to protect people who do business here, people who live here, from discrimination. And I don't see how that's divisive. I take a particular issue with that. If anything, I think that it is in our financial best interest to do this, because there are certain businesses and industries who will not locate here within this city if we don't have this in place, particularly the film industry. So people have been discriminated against. There have been stories that made the news that people have been discriminated against in Tucker. There have been at least 3 stories that made national news. One that was particularly egregious against a woman who was just trying to get a prescription filled for her miscarriage. These are people that we have a fiduciary responsibility to protect. So I am all for this. I pledge, if I get elected mayor, to get this on the council agenda and read for consideration within my first 60 days.
Mayor Almond, would you like to respond? 1 minute, sir?
Well, first of all, I'm sorry that you endured that yourself, Robin. It's not right. There is a law called USERRA that protects you and gives you redress in that specific case of discrimination against military and military personnel. There are all kinds of laws on the books, and that's one of the reasons we're, as a city, not authorized to enter into it, because we'll create conflicts, we'll create duplication, we'll create all sorts of difficulty. These things are right now, and during the time that we've been talking about it since 2019, right now being legislated, being adjudicated in the courts, and that's good. They are clearing up this area of the law, but it's hard, and us jumping in only creates all sorts of difficulty. And by the way, we're a long way from a consensus that, yes, maybe you've heard from businesses who won't move here because we don't have such an ordinance. I've heard from businesses who said they never would have moved here had we had such an ordinance because of the liability they'd be faced with. So
Thank you.
We're a long way off.
Mr. Biro, I'll give you 1 minute to respond to that, and then we will move on, sir.
One of the excuses, so there are other excuses that I want to just address and get out in the open. One is that this doesn't include due process, but it's right here. There is a hearing. It establishes a hearing officer. This is all in here. I suspect that some of the people that were opposed to this in 2019 might just need to refresh their memory, because, as I said, I've met with 5 of the 6 council members, and I'm keep getting some of the same excuses, and I'm happy to educate and talk about these, but and some of the federal laws that protect against discrimination, you're right, Mr. Mayor, they do exist, but they exist for companies that have 15 or more employees. That doesn't help small businesses in Tucker, and Tucker has a heck of a lot of small businesses. Yours is one of them.
Thank you, Mr. Biro. And actually, businesses are our next question, so that's a great segue. And we're going to start with Mr. Biro. Tucker has a history of a strong business community, and that predates Tucker becoming a city. How will you balance the interest of city IDs, residents, business owners, and property owners when it comes to making good policy for Tucker? 3 minutes, sir.
So this is interesting. We've heard a lot of talk about the gray wall, because it is rather jarring when you're driving from Smoke Rise through Mountain Industrial Park. It hits you in your face. But I want to say this, those industrial and manufacturing and businesses, they create a huge tax base. I want to work with the CIDs. I've met with both of them, and they have some fantastic ideas. Each of them have presented to me their top 3 initiatives and ideas that they want me to consider should I get elected. And those are very interesting, and I'm looking into them. Of course, first and foremost is establishing our own police department. This is something that I came out against initially because we are early on. We are just learning to crawl as a city. I don't think that we're there yet with a police force, but we do pay a substantial amount of money to unincorporated DeKalb County. If Stone Mountain can afford a police force, I know that we can. And I don't think that Tucker Summit CID should be spending $300,000 on their own police patrols. So I do want to help meet with these people. They've told me that they're not getting the support that they need. I don't know if that's true or not. That might be hearsay. I just want to say that. But I want to work closely with them. Also, there are small business incubators here in the city that have told me that they wish they could get more response from city council. I hope that we can get that. Small business incubators are fantastic in terms of growing small businesses within a city, especially one as young and growing and vibrant and diverse as Tucker.
Thank you, Mr. Biro. Mayor Almond, same question to you. As you know, Tucker has a history of a strong business community, and that history predates Tucker becoming a city. How will you balance the interest of CIDs, residents, business owners, and property owners when it comes to making good policy for the city of Tucker? 3 minutes, sir.
Well, I think everybody who's observed me being a mayor knows that the business community is supporting it, has been and will remain a huge priority for me. We have over 3,150 businesses registered in the city of Tucker. 2,800 of them are 15 employees or less. And just to go back to the last topic for a minute, that Title VII has been around for 50 some years now. It's always had an exclusion for businesses under 15 employees. There's 1,000 pages in the law about why that is. So putting upon them would require overcoming a whole lot of good history and good legal thought. before we put that kind of onus on all our small local businesses. But listen, the gray wall, that was a term coined during an argument a while back over a zoning matter. That gray wall built Tucker. And the area where we live, where my opponent and I both live in Smoke Rise, grew up to serve people who wanted to work in that now known as gray wall. So it's a disparaging thing to call them. And it's part of the reason, it's the exact reason that I started Manufacturing Day, because after that argument, and I heard people talking about, well, we don't even know what's in those rundown old buildings. They're just sitting there vacant. They're not vacant. Most of those buildings, a huge portfolio of them has sold twice during the time that I've been mayor, and each time double the price that it was before. Occupancy is over 90%. It's in the high 90%. We just heard that from a presenter at Manufacturing Day a month or so ago. So there's a vibrant business community out there, and we need to nurture them. We need to appreciate them. They provide jobs and local jobs so a person can live and work near their home. We've got a lot of communicating to do to make sure that everybody on all sides appreciates the other. That's unity. That's how we learn to get along, through educating and talking with each other, not standing across the street throwing shots the other's way as if we're right or more important and they don't matter.
Thank you, Mayor Almond. And we'll start the next question with you, sir. What needs to happen before the city of Tucker can take over stormwater and roads from DeKalb County? It's been a year since this was first brought up at City Council. 3 minutes, sir.
That's a great question, and it's one that we talked about for a long time, and that I think I can say without betraying confidence is we have a pretty solid consensus now on our City Council that that's what needs to be done. But it's a process to take it over. So we, first of all, it requires a referendum. That's part of our charter as well, that if we want to take over a new service like that, either tax or raise fees, we've got to have a referendum of the public. And that means we've got to study it thoroughly. We've got to make our case. We've got to convince them that not only can we do it, but that we can do it financially, that we can do it without financially jeopardizing them or the status of the city. And so we've been at work on that. The first problem is that DeKalb doesn't even charge enough to do the job if they were doing it really, really well. They're doing neither. So it's not, in the case of stormwater, it's a fee. It's not a tax, but it's a fee on your bill. And DeKalb currently charges $48 a year, $4 a month. It needs to be more in the range of $6, even up to $8, depending on the level of service that we want to provide. And we've looked at what other cities have done. Frankly, I've had other mayors tell me, you know what, it's a money pit. It's difficult to manage. It's problematic from top to bottom, but I wouldn't do it any other way. I wouldn't let anybody else manage my stormwater. And I'm convinced of that. So you're going to see action very soon on scheduling a referendum, scheduling education sessions for the public, getting their input about what the level of service needs to be, and taking care of that. Right now, that's all provided by way of an IGA. And DeKalb's lack of performance on that has led to problems on everything from Kofor Lake to the dam at John's Homestead to holes in my opponent's neighbor's yards that he's talked about. That's all on DeKalb. And our job has been to try to ride herd on that agreement, make sure it gets executed effectively, and it simply hasn't. So we're at the point where we think it's something that we need to do. Roads and drainage kind of goes along with it. It's a little bit of a different matter as to taxation, but they travel together.
Thank you, Mayor Almond. Robin Biro, same question to you, sir. What needs to happen before the city of Tucker can take over stormwater and roads from DeKalb County? It has been a year since that was first proposed at City Council. 3 minutes, sir.
This is tricky, and I've met with Tammy Hanlon, and we've discussed this. I know that there are well over 100 collapsed storm drains within the city limits. And as Mayor Almond just said, that there is one directly across the street from me that you could fit a school bus in. And it's been now 13 months that it's just been sitting there. And look, I've got 2 school-aged children, 9 and 13 years old. When that thing first collapsed, they thought it was a new playground. So I had to keep them out of it. It's a safety concern. We've got to hold DeKalb County's feet to the fire because they're collecting tax money for this. We pay the stormwater fees. It's $48 per household. They've got the money, they've got the resources to do this. I want to say that for one of the homes down the street from me, they actually had the nerve to tell them that they needed to pay for it themselves. They actually did. Those homeowners got an engineer out there, got an estimate of $200,000 to repair the collapsed storm drain there that the county is responsible for. That is, if you multiplied that by 100, that's $20 million. So that's insane. The county's got to be better stewards of our tax money. The city can hold their feet to the fire. We have a full-time employee that can actually take this on. I suspect we may need another that can take on at least working to make sure, because the mayor just said that the intergovernmental agreement isn't being honored with in terms of the collapsed storm drains. So if we had a full-time employee, that's something that I would love to see to maybe get this done, to make sure that this tax money is getting spent before we take them over, because I don't want to inherit a boondoggle. And right now I'm being told by every resident, I've been canvassing, I've been knocking on doors, and the ones that have collapsed storm drains in their properties tell me that the only action that they could ever get was to sue the county. That also involves suing the city because of the intergovernmental agreement. And it's a mess. So I just hope that we can provide some relief to the citizens, because frankly, it's a danger. I'm worried about a child or a pet or somebody falling into one of these and getting injured.
Thank you, Mr. Biro.
We can hire another employee, or we can whine about DeKalb County. The fact is, they don't have any money. They don't even have any crews to speak of at work on these problems. And so the point is to get the problem solved. And that's why I say we've come to the conclusion that if it's going to get done, we're going to have to do it ourselves.
Mr. Biro, a quick response to that if you want.
I may be mistaken here, but if to my knowledge, we have never raised the stormwater fees. They stay at the introductory $48 a household price. If we did take it over, correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Mayor, but would we be able to raise those to help offset some of those costs?
Yeah, that would be part of the referendum. It would be part of what the citizenry approved, and it would be part of what we'd have to convince them we were able and willing to handle at a certain price. But yeah, it's been 20 years since DeKalb County raised the $4 a month rate.
Then that's something that I would support. I have come out in support of it. I just wanted to make sure I was speaking and giving accurate information. Thank you, sir.
Happy to have you on board.
Look at us solving problems with the Tucker Observer problem. I like it. Robin Biro, we're going to start this question with you, since we started the last one with Mayor Almond. Do you think Tucker should have its own police department? And if so, how will the city pay for it?
That is tricky. As I just said in an earlier question, the city of Stone Mountain has a police department. Now, if we did establish a police department, then we lose certain services. We lose, for example, SWAT. We would lose helicopter services because we receive those from DeKalb County right now. So this is not something that needs to be entered into prematurely. Now, when I did meet with Tucker Summit CID, I did review that was the top of their three concerns, was that they want to work toward establishing our own police department. I talked with Tammy Hamlin, and it's possible. The money's there. I would love to see that money, instead of going to unincorporated DeKalb and subsidizing effectively all of DeKalb County, unincorporated DeKalb County, for that to be spent here and give these people pensions, and retirement funds, health insurance, because I want them invested in the community. So it's something that I would love to work toward. It just needs a lot more sunshine on it and a lot more eyes on it to get there.
Mayor Almond, same question to you. Do you think Tucker needs its own police department? And if so, how would the city pay for it?
Well, like every other service that we can provide, do provide, could provide, the question is, what's the best way to provide it? And so in the beginning of the city, it was determined by this leadership group that sticking with DeKalb's police, for some of the reasons that my opponent mentioned, it makes sense. They have a lot of services, a lot of depth, a lot of ability to adjust and scale according to what we need. So we have an excellent relationship with DeKalb Police Department, and especially with our Tucker precinct, which we did some really innovative things in our intergovernmental agreement, so that precinct covers all of the city of Tucker. And so the precinct commander, Major Medlin, functions in some ways like a local police chief. It's not exactly analogous, but there's something there. But we work hard, and they work hard, to build relationships in the community, which is the point of local policing. They're responsive to our concerns. We work with, as I say, Major Medlin, but also Chief Ramos. I have a meeting with her tomorrow. Public Safety Director Lumpkin, the CEO, the commissioners. the critical thing there that we depend on them for is to be sure that these officers get paid appropriately, so that they're attracted and retained, that they get the equipment and the training that they need. That's something that's been lacking in DeKalb, but especially manpower. The big lack has been just the number of officers on the street and their availability for response and patrol and all the other things. So again, if we decided or began to think that we needed to have our own police department, it would involve a referendum. It would involve exiting the special tax district that we pay into for police right now. It would involve establishing a budget for the service level that we want. Just because we have our own police department doesn't mean there's going to be a patrol car on your street every night. It's a matter of funding and what level of that the citizenry is willing to take on. So yeah, we could withdraw. We could take the money that we're now paying into that special tax district and fund a police department. But whether that police department could fulfill the vision of people like the Tucker Summit CID or individual citizens who think we don't have enough coverage, all those things, it's got to be really thoroughly vetted. And we've got to have a firm grip on what it's going to cost, because if we come out of it, we're on our own. We can't turn back. We can't change our minds then. And if we get a year or 2 or 5 into it and we find out we need 50% more money to provide the level of service that we thought we were going to get or that we wanted to get, it becomes a big problem. So we got one chance to get that right when the time comes, and we will. When we undertake it, we will make sure that we know what we're doing and we know what we expect, and that we have a reasonable means of reaching that expectation.
Thank you, Mayor Almond. The next question, I'm going to jump to some questions that are coming in from Twitch, and I'm getting a couple of questions about the charter, so I'm going to try to synthesize this into one question that's a little broader. And the question is, what do you think the city's charter needs to be changed? And if so, what changes would you make? And I'm going to start with you, Mayor Almond.
It's an ongoing discussion. So there's an important nuance about cities. We were created, or at least allowed to be created, by the state legislature. Cities are creatures of the state legislature. The importance is that counties are creatures of the state constitution. So where they have a lot more latitude and a different set of services that they can and are expected to provide, cities are different. And there's a long list of services cities can provide. And when we established Tucker, we did it under a model I call City Smart, which was to take upon ourselves the things that we can do best locally. Parks. Who's going to care more about parks in Tucker than the people who live in Tucker? Who's going to care more about zoning and land use than the people who live in Tucker? Why should that decision be made in Decatur by a board of 7 people, where one represents Tucker and another represents Tucker plus a whole bunch of other space? So our charter calls on us to provide a limited set of those services and to cooperate with the county on things that make more sense. We're never going to build our own water system, not in my lifetime. So we're going to continue to work with the county on that. We're not divorced from them. We're simply taking upon ourselves the things we can do better. And so stormwater is a good example of one that was not in originally. But as we mature and as we understand how that works, and as we see how the money flows and how the service is provided, we've come to the conclusion that we can do better. And so that's why we'll proceed down that path of asking our citizens if they'll trust us to take over that service. I'm not sure if I'm getting to the point of the question of the writer, but there are things. So if we want to change our charter, first of all, we had a charter review commission. Every member of that commission was appointed by a state legislator who represents a part of Tucker. I think there were 7 of those, and then I got to appoint someone, and then the council as a whole got to appoint someone. They went through hours and hours of meetings, hours and hours of public input meeting, debates, questions, research, and they came up with a list of things they thought we should change. Some of those can be changed under what's called home rule, meaning we can just decide them for ourselves. Some of them we have to go hat in hand down to the legislature, like our ability to continue to regulate massage establishments in Tucker. If you look around Tucker, you don't see the seedy kind of massage establishments that you see in other places. That's because we eliminated them using the power that we have to regulate a very few specific kinds of businesses in the city. But we had to go fight for that. The legislature is not in a mood to give us more latitude to regulate businesses. They're in a mood to draw that back. It's called preemption, where they continually take away our ability to do things under home rule. So yeah, there are always ongoing discussions about changing our charter in various ways. some which we can do ourselves, and some which we have to go beg permission from our delegation.
Thank you. Robin Biro, same question to you. What do you think that there should be changes to Tucker's charter? And if so, what changes would you make? 3 minutes, sir.
Certainly. There are always changes to the charter. And look, when we incorporated it as a city, we had to select 3 things that we were going to take over. We did that. But we also took over a 4th, which was tourism. And now we've delegated much of that over to Discover DeKalb. And I think they're doing a phenomenal job. I was at their meeting where they gave their presentation, and I really do think that they're doing a good job there. But that is a common misconception that we are somehow limited to those 3 things. And I gave that 4th example to show that no, we're not. These things do change. They are fluid. I agree with the mayor. I think we need to look at, before I even announced, I was wanting to look at the possibility of taking over stormwater because it's just in a sad situation. We've got to do something though about this, the fact that some of the sanitary sewer lines are, like I said, are at capacity to the point that some of the existing buildings cannot be modified unless they use only the existing plumbing. They can't make any modifications because the sewer lines are at capacity, and some of these big buildings are vacant. It is not many, to be fair. The vacancy rate is not very high, but there are some eyesores and some properties that can't be used. If we're going to grow as a city, we're going to have to do something about that. We're going to have all hands on deck to figure that one out. But yes, the city charter can definitely change. It has changed. And I look forward to discussions with more people to see how we can more effectively service some of the industrial properties and get these crumbling storm drains under control.
So
I got to correct just a couple of facts there. If it's
I'll
okay.
give you 1 minute, Mayor.
Every city has to have a DMO, a destination marketing organization. It's not a 4th service in the sense of something like stormwater. The charter is not fluid. It can be changed, but there's a process, and sometimes a pretty arduous process to change it, involving the public. And I have to say, I don't know what your position is on stormwater now, but 30 days ago today, you gave an interview in which you were talking about the stormwater tax and the fact that the city owned the stormwater system and citizens were having to sue us to get
I did not.
It was all over the place.
That is not accurate.
Factually wrong.
Well, that is not accurate. I know that the city doesn't own them.
I'll play the recording.
Well, I know that the city doesn't own those. I wasn't born yesterday. I'm learning a lot. Now, don't get me wrong. I don't know everything. I'm learning every day. I'm growing as a candidate. It's impossible to enter into a race and know everything right out of the gate. But I do know that the city doesn't own those, and those are the responsibility of DeKalb County. It's something that we should look forward to taking over. We just agreed about raising the watershed fees, as long as that money stays with the city of Tucker, not DeKalb County.
Thank you. And we are actually 8 minutes from the end of our forum. We are making good progress on these questions. Gentlemen, do you have an extra 15 minutes to devote to this, or do you crunch for time? Mayor, Robin?
I could go a few minutes extra, I suppose.
Okay. Rob,
a few, yeah. I've got some hungry children, but
I understand. We'll try to keep it brief. We'll limit the answers to 2 minutes. Robin Biro, starting with you, Tucker has seen growth in recent years, including new residential developments. What are your plans to manage the growth that Tucker is seeing right now? 2 minutes, sir.
I was just at a meeting where we looked at the traffic plans and projections. We are already aware that we will be facing some gridlock situations if we don't. The city is already making some long-term and long-range plans. These have to be acted on prudently, efficiently, as fast as we can, because look, it took me an hour to drive from Publix to Kanawha subdivision last week. So, we've got to get the traffic under control, some traffic implementation. And sorry, what was the question? I've lost my track.
It says Tucker has seen growth in recent years, including new residential developments.
Okay, I'm there. Impact fees, it's something I've proposed before. We are seeing there are a number of tracks that are being developed right now. Just within recent weeks, we've seen a number of townhome communities. There's one I know that is going to be renting for $2,000 a month. I love seeing the new development, but I still think that we need to really look at the possibility of having developer paid impact fees. And I know that many people on city council right now are opposed to those, but they are occurring all throughout municipalities surrounding us where developers are paying for some of the infrastructure that they damage. I'm all for that. I'm in commercial real estate. This is not uncommon. It actually creates a level playing field with developers. I know it's not popular with a lot of developers because if they have to pay $500 extra per household for an impact fee, it cuts into their bottom line, but it does help curb some of the unchecked growth. And that is something that I'm all about.
Thank you. Mayor Almond, same question to you. Tucker has seen growth in recent years, including new residential developments. What are your plans to manage the growth that Tucker is seeing right now? 2 minutes, sir.
Thanks. Well, it's a constant tension within the city as to property rights of existing citizens to enjoy the property that they own, the rights of owners to sell and maximize their value. So it's something we deal with all the time. We had a long, interesting discussion at the University of Government Affairs meeting last night about a development over on Idlewood Road. It's, I think, 58 or 52 new houses, but it's on a piece of property that was zoned that way, and the owner has the right to develop it that way. So they have to meet our building codes and safety standards and all the rest, but they don't have to ask our permission to build the houses as a general statement. So that's why we have these plans. There's long-term plans, as my opponent mentioned, to deal with some of those issues on Idlewood Road. It's becoming one of the critical pathways through the city that is the least able to handle new influx of traffic and so forth. Let me say a word or two about impact fees, because impact fees are not to charge a developer for destroying or damaging infrastructure. If a developer damages infrastructure, they're paying for it, period. Impact fees have a very limited use if the development creates the need for further infrastructure. So if they put so much stress on our system that the roads can't handle it, or that the parks can't handle it, or that the schools can't handle it, communities in Georgia can impose impact fees. We've not done that. What we do instead, part of the solution to the same problem, is we require those developers to build things like sidewalks on the property that they're developing so that we don't have to. Trails, other forms of infrastructure, green space, there are all kinds of requirements. Replace trees, either replant or contribute to the tree bank, which is a source of funds for us to plant trees elsewhere in the city. So it's not that they don't have any requirements or any responsibility to contribute to the impact they have on the community, but taxing the other guy so that everybody has more money is kind of a failed philosophy.
Thank you, Mayor Almond. And we are gonna work to be respectful of your time, since we're going to give each of you 3 minutes to make a statement, closing statement. So, Mr. Biro, I'm going to give you 3 minutes to make your closing statement, and then we'll allow Mayor Almond to close us out to make a 3-minute closing statement. So, Mr. Biro, your closing statement, sir. 3 minutes.
First, I want to thank everyone for tuning in tonight and staying with us as long as you have. I have not been a resident as long as the mayor has, but I do see room for improvement. I think they've done a good job, but there are things that we need to improve. I look forward to bringing fresh, new ideas. I've been in commercial real estate for 20 years. I've appraised properties and done consulting work on everything from military bases to big boxes to huge tracts of land, everything that you can think of. I know the demands that are needed and what is needed to improve and maximize some of these spaces that aren't being utilized and are underutilized in our city. I have a breadth of experience. I've got 10 years of experience leading soldiers as a ranger in Ranger Regiment. I know how to work with people across the political spectrum. I can get this job done. And like I said, I think they've done a good job. I just think it's time for fresh new ideas. Our mayor has served 2 terms. I think it's time for a change of guard. I am the man for the job. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Biro. Mayor Almond, 3-minute closing statement, sir.
Thanks, Dan. Thanks again for putting this together and giving our public a chance to kind of hear and compare and contrast their choices for mayor. There's just 2 of us, and one of us is going to be the mayor come January. I'm here to ask for your vote. It's an honor to serve as mayor, but it's not an honorary position. It's hard work, and it's a lot of work, and it's a lot of learning. It's a lot of building teams and bringing disparate groups together to make decisions that benefit the whole. It's all of that. It's a rewarding job because we do things that we get to see the results of. When we improve something, we get the benefit of improving it. So it's rewarding work. I'm not asking for your vote as a reward. I'm asking for your vote because I believe I'm the right person to continue on the path that we've started. It's kind of odd that after 5.5 years, I'm running for my third term. It's just the way the quirks of the law work. I served less than 2 years on a first term. I'm allowed to have three, but that first one counted. So I'm finishing my second, and I'm allowed by our charter to serve one more. I'm able, I'm willing, I want to do the job. I'm asking for your vote, and we're going to spend the next 7 or 8 weeks talking about it. I want to point out that we have early voting location in Tucker at the Tucker Library. That's thanks to the city paying the bill to have it here for the benefit of our citizens. You can request an absentee ballot right now. I don't think they're sending them out yet quite, but they will be very shortly, and you can get your request in. And if you miss all of that, election day is November the 2nd. You vote at your regular voting precinct. And I hope when you do, you'll punch the button for Frank Almond for mayor.
Thank you, Mayor Almond, and thank you, Mr. Biro, and thank you both for your interest in public service. Thank you both for being willing to commit your time to doing this. It's the most impactful government that we have, which is local government. Thank you to the 50. We had a great audience tonight. Thank you for the dozens of people who tuned in tonight. The election is November 2nd. Early voting does start October 12th. You can find all of our elections coverage at tuckerobservervotes.com. If you appreciate the opportunity we've given you tonight to hear from these candidates, please visit supportmylocalnews.com and consider becoming a paying supporter of Tucker Observer and Decaturish. Even $3 a month will help us continue to provide these forums for you throughout this year and the years to come. So our next forum is going to be Friday morning. We're going to do two. We're going to do District 1 Post 1 from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. And we're going to do District 1 Post 2 from 12 p.m. to 1 p.m. That will be on Twitch. We will record those and upload those to YouTube later. So if you can't make them, you'll still get an opportunity to watch that. So I hope you will join us. Everyone, stay safe. Have a wonderful evening. And we will see everyone again on Friday morning. Bye-bye, everybody.